Meghan Markle and her sidekick Harry have let it be known that they found it offensive when actress Justine Bateman labelled them disaster tourists after their photo op visit to the smouldering ruins of fire-ravaged Los Angeles. The gruesome twosome's favourite gossip column, the New York Post's famous Page 6, reported that the Sussexes were dismayed by the very suggestion they were exploiting LA's tragedy for their own publicity purposes. Nice try, Your Majesties, but a great many residents of the City of Angels were left asking what the hell you thought you were doing, theatrically hugging victims and traipsing through the embers of homes destroyed by the inferno. How did this regal tour of the wreckage help anyone, except perhaps a pair of opportunistic grifters desperate to look caring and sharing for the cameras? Prior to their tragedy vulture antics, the tone-deaf Duke and Duchess issued an unasked-for statement urging Californians to offer those who had lost their homes a place to stay, swiftly followed by what was described as the breaking news that they'd thrown open the doors of their massive Montecito mansion to friends and loved ones affected by the catastrophe that wiped out thousands of buildings and annihilated entire neighbourhoods. The death toll stands at 25 and rising. Perhaps Meghan and Harry will list and name those they have given refuge to, but my guess is they won't. Amid the escalating carnage, the domestic goddess Duchess announced that she was postponing the release of her uneagerly awaited Netflix cooking show With Love, Meghan, because under the circumstances it would be inappropriate. So I suppose we should thank God for small mercies. In fairness, I actually believe that was the right decision. Nevertheless, trumpeting the headline-hitting delay came across like a shameless bid to get her 8-part series talked about. Is it just me, or, like all the Hollywood superstars who sensibly steered clear, wouldn't it have been preferable if Ms Markle and Ginger Nuts had just stayed away? Shouldn't they have wound their necks in, not made the 200-mile journey to the burning metropolis, and somehow maintained a shred of dignity? Is it just me, or was the Sussexes' day trip to tragedy all a bit tawdry? You decide. Meanwhile, still with Harry, ahead of the petulant prince's latest solo return to Britain, he was reported to have secured only limited police protection, as opposed to the full-scale armed cop guard he demands but does not warrant. Obsessively, the prince is spending a fortune suing the British government in a forlorn attempt to be granted First Division frontline royal status. But how can he be a frontline royal when he lives in a foreign country more than 5,000 miles away? Why should UK taxpayers fork out for the demanding Duke when he does no work for the nation he deserted? Also, as has become something of a tradition when he graces Britain with his esteemed presence, Harry has rebuffed the King's kindness. When Charles offered his son a suite at Buckingham Palace, he was promptly turned down. Rude and typical. But as we march into 2025, what lies ahead for Team Sussex? After it finally hits the screen in March, will Meg's show be the smash hit she dreams of? Frankly, it's unlikely, unless the viewing public suddenly yearns to know how to freeze edible flowers into ice cubes, or how to liven up hummus by stirring in a spot of olive oil, or how to bake cakes that, although not perfect, are certainly joyful. Vital stuff. Meanwhile, will Ms Markle ever get her troubled lifestyle site American Riviera orchard off the ground? Don't bet the farm on it. And as for hapless Harry, a directionless English aristocrat adrift on the Californian West Coast, what's he going to do? Your guess is as good as mine. Answers on a postcard, please.
Busy weekend for us on WhatsApp as we exchanged all of the wild stories coming out of Los Angeles about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
Absolutely, and I think the big one was endorsing really everything that you and I have talked about over the past few months, endorsing what the Hollywood Reporter publication said about them. The Hollywood Reporter a few months back said that Meghan Markle was a nightmare employer, a tyrant in high heels who reduced grown men to tears. Of course, Meghan denied this, but guess what? We've now got Vanity Fair, an almost biblical publication, a publication that Americans treat very, very seriously again. Well, they might. It's a very serious publication. It's a serious magazine. All over its new edition, front page, is Harry and Meghan, American Hustlers. American Hustle. They are dismissed as a pair of hustlers trying to make trying to make a few quid, a few bucks in America. And I suppose that the gruesome twosomes disaster tourism to Los Angeles, when for a photo op they appeared in the middle of the wreckage of the LA fires. People have really reacted badly against that, and basically nobody wants to give them the time of day at the moment. We had Justin Bateman has said that they're disaster tourists. Kelly Osbourne led the charge, expressing her disgust over what she said were a couple of grifters, tragedy vultures, trying to cash in on the catastrophe, trying to look good, trying to look angelic. Looks as if that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Finally, people have had enough of these two, I can't see because of what Vanity Fair is saying about them. Vanity Fair, Kinsey, let's get your comments on this, is saying that Meghan is such a terrible employer that after one worker had to work with her on her podcast series, Archetypes, that worker was so traumatized that they had to go into long-term therapy because Meghan was so hellish to work with. I mean, these are very damaging allegations, aren't they?
No, I mean, they're certainly not flattering. I spoke to somebody that works with Vanity Fair and said, what kind of process goes into a piece like this? Because just the therapy idea alone is incredibly, for their brand, it's horrific. And then there's the rumor that Meghan is shopping a post-divorce book. So I asked somebody that worked at Vanity Fair, how do you get away with this, right? These are some very serious allegations. And they said that months and months of research and sourcing went into this piece, and that legal had to approve every single word, that Vanity Fair and their legal team ensured that there was nothing in here that Harry and Meghan could sue them over. I mean, these two people are so litigious. So I am very confident in the sourcing. I'm very confident in the material. They described it as forensic research. And to me, that's a pretty compelling argument.
Yeah, absolutely. And they tried to kick back against the Hollywood Reporter. This was about 3 months ago, wasn't it, when the Hollywood Reporter accused the Duchess of being tantrum-prone, a tyrant in high heels, reducing men to, and indeed other workers to tears with her style of being a boss. Shouting at people, really upsetting them. Well, they kick back against that and says, oh, this is just people with an agenda. Well, they can't keep kicking back at this stuff. As you quite rightly say, well, look, the Hollywood Reporter, Kinsey, is a very serious publication. It isn't just a tabloid who just chucks these kind of accusations into its pages for sensationalist reasons, and nor for God's sake, is Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair, this was like a 5,000-word article going into every detail of what's been pretty disastrous for these two, for Harry and Meghan, since they came to America, was it in 2020, something like that. So all in all, a really, really bad week for them. And they can deny this as much as they like, but now it's written in stone, isn't it, that Meghan is pretty much a nightmare to be around if you work for her.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to reiterate that sources close to the Sussexes are saying that they're dismissing this Vanity Fair article. They're just simply dismissing it. Well, in 2017, Vanity Fair gave Meghan her big break, and she graced the cover of their magazine with the headline, "She's Just Wild About Harry." And we found out in Valentine Lowe's book, Courtiers, that Harry and Meghan drove Vanity Fair crazy trying to get the headline changed on the website, contemplated suing Meghan's brand new PR team that helped orchestrate that cover, and accused them of being, Vanity Fair accused them of being racist for using the line "Wild About Harry," which originated from a 1930-something movie starring Judy Garland, Babes in Arms, where Judy wore blackface. So we know that they are not just dismissing this. When you go as far as to accuse a beautiful, sweet cover like the one Meghan got in 2017, something she would never have been able to have had she not been dating Prince Harry, there's no way she would have scored a Vanity Fair cover had it not been for Prince Harry. To go and accuse them of racism over the cute line on the cover, dishes are flying in Montecito. They're, dismissing this story. What a joke.
Yeah, I mean, they can't keep doing it. I mean, they dismissed the Hollywood Reporter, saying, oh, it was just rumours spread by someone with an agenda. And now they're dismissing the very thorough work of Vanity Fair, 5,000-word, thoroughly well-researched article. They was dismissing that as distressing. Well, you might be distressed by it, but that isn't a denial, is it? They can't keep denying this stuff. I mean, they're in trouble because of this, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, there have been a couple of other reactions to it. A friend who remains in contact with both Prince William and Harry told the Daily Beast the Vanity Fair divorce story seemed very unfair. There was a book, but there wasn't a book. She was planning for a life after divorce, but they are totally in love. What? There was not a shred of evidence. So they do have some people in their corner fighting back for them. But at the same time, it's interesting that they pick and choose very specific topics to react to. How many times can you deny that you're a bully? You really can't. And you've already scouted Us Weekly magazine for your redemption piece after the Hollywood Reporter. Where do you go from here? The National Enquirer? I just don't know where they can go to try to tell. Or People magazine. I mean, it was People that got all the exclusives about Harry and Meghan on the ground after the LA fires. We are smarter than that. We see that there are certain publications that are willing to give them the press they want, not the press they've earned or deserve. And so we don't take those publications seriously. Vanity Fair is a very serious and respected publication, and I trust this piece.
Yeah, and when the Hollywood Reporter article appeared, a big investigation, they interviewed 12 people who'd either had worked for Meghan or were still working for Meghan. There was talk in the air from the Meghan camp that they might sue, and I remember the editor of the Hollywood Reporter went on to Access Hollywood, didn't he, the TV show over there, and said, if you want to sue, be my guest. You come for us then, because we have researched this fully, and you sue, we will win. Guess what? There was no lawsuit forthcoming, and I suspect, don't you, Kinsey, that Vanity Fair won't get a lawsuit either?
Yeah, and don't you remember right after the Hollywood Reporter article, the Beast did a follow-up with some of their contacts, aka the Sussex Survivors Club, and they said in September that Meghan had her psycho moments and could be a demon, and that they felt vindicated. They told the Daily Beast over the weekend that they felt vindicated by these new claims. At the time, too, they said that they kind of joked about the fact that Meghan was the classic narcissist, but they could not believe that she had asked contacts to talk to a magazine and, you know, talk about what a great boss she was, what a joke that was, and how it just kind of proved to them that she was the classic narcissist. But when reacting to this Vanity Fair piece, one said, I feel desperately sorry for the people affected because I have been there, but I also feel vindicated. All those people saying she is the world's greatest boss should be ashamed of themselves. It's obviously very tempting to work for her when you are being wooed and love bombed, but people should be in no doubt she is a nightmare. I would think the atmosphere will be particularly hellish now. Everything is going to a bad word. It's fecal matter, but they used the other word. But you know, that employee saying everything's going to you know what, it's probably hellish working for Meghan Markle today.
I bet. And a little word about, which was included in the Vanity Fair article, they've made it very clear that Meghan has never said this, there's no confirmation of this, but it was in the article, and this is this extraordinary claim that Meghan has been shopping around publishers asking if they might be interested in a post-divorce memoir written by her. I mean, if that's true, that's something of a bombshell, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and that's my point. That's really the only claim Harry and Meghan's side is responding to say that that isn't true and that that doesn't exist, and pointing out the contradiction where basically the author says somewhere within the article that these two are madly in love, that she's confident that they're madly in love and that they act like they want to rip each other's clothes off when you're with them. But at the end, she then talks about this potential book, this post-marriage book. So Harry and Meghan's team are pushing back on that narrative. Yeah. But with all these other accusations, Beyonce turned down Meghan's podcast. Archetypes wasn't Meghan Markle's idea. Harry would gladly just stay at home and allow Meghan to do all the tough work to bring in the dough. They're not pushing back on any of these other allegations, which are all very damaging.
Indeed, and I like the way you say that Harry and Meghan have denied the reports that she's been shopping around for a post-divorce memoir deal. Well, Harry might not know, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, Harry's in the...
Yeah, well, Harry could deny it, but maybe he's being kept in the dark. Think about that, folks.
What about a bit of Harry and Meghan, Kev?
Harry and Meghan. Delivery drivers can sometimes be grifters, and we are talking about the king and queen of grifters here. They are being labelled right now grief grifters.
What?
They're also being labelled disaster tourists, and they're also being labelled tragedy vultures. So these names are being applied to them because they turned up mysteriously to Los Angeles in the middle of the fires where thousands of people were losing their home. That city, my old hometown.
Did they lose? They didn't lose there?
Of course not. They live 200 miles north.
Oh, right. That's to drive 3 hours to get there.
They specifically drove 200 miles, frankly, to be photographed. It was a photo op, of Meghan being kind and hugging people.
They're sort of ambulance chasing.
Yeah, well, I heard, right, they turned up, they sort of stood behind a kind of desk handing out soup or something or other. They walked through other people's houses and looked at all their possessions, which I thought was rather intrusive. And I'm hearing that they spent a total of 17 minutes there. There's a great bit of footage of some...
It's a busy schedule.
There's a great bit of footage of some woman in a wheelchair basically going like that to them and them just charging past, not even looking at her. Now, call me cynical, but I think they're cashing in. I think they did this to be photographed, to look like they're sort of beautiful people. They're wonderful people. Now, look, think about this. Los Angeles is a city full of people who are far more famous, far more world famous, far more well known than that couple of nobodies, right? And did any of those superstars from Hollywood, did they go down there? No. And I'll bet you they all thought about it and then thought that would be wrong. That would look distasteful. Yeah. That would be crass. That would look like I was cashing in on the tragedy of others. But that didn't occur to the gruesome twosome from Montecito. I think it was disgusting what they did.
How do you think it happened? Do you think her PR? I think it was probably her idea.
She doesn't listen to PRs.
No,
That's her
she just
problem.
does it.
The chances are they would have been advised, this won't look good. This will look like you're cashing in. You're capitalising on other people's misery. But she won't listen. She won't listen to anyone.
There's a disaster. We gotta look good. We gotta look good.
How do you feel about Harry and Meghan? Ash,
I
as a
think-
new grumpy.
Well, I think Harry's been. There's various phrases for it, but you know, she's far above his station, so she's had no problem getting. She was over here looking for a man because Lizzie Cundy told me, and she bagged a big one, so she's played a blinder.
She went through Piers Morgan first, if I can put it that way.
Tried that, but then
She tried Piers, that didn't work out. They went for a drink and
Through Piers Morgan like a dose of salt.
so she moved down in the world to ginger nuts.
Yeah, and he's just under the thumb, caught in the headlights. And
But this trope, this kind of meme that somehow she's the really clever one. We all know he's as dumb as. But she is really clever. Well, she's not very clever.
no, but she's dominant. She's really stupid.
She's dominant. she's a bully. She bullies.
The same as him, really. The same level of
She
intellect.
can't play the Hollywood game. She's
Kev,
crap
I
at
want
it.
to know if you're disappointed by the news that they've delayed the release of her cooking show.
I think the
because
one
of the
good thing
fires.
to come out of this is we don't have to put up with Meghan with love.
I was looking forward to it.
Yeah, her
I was
cooking
looking
show
forward
for Netflix.
Purely from a judgmental
She's
point
a
of
well-known cook, isn't
It will come out in the end, but that series, I mean...
What do you reckon her portion size is
Yeah.
like?
Oh, she'll have decent. She won't be paying for it, will she? But it'll just be
But
eaten mess.
Look,
probably,
she's
won't it?
delayed her own agony, but when that show does come
She's
out,
married to an
it
eaten
will
mess.
fail.
Yeah.
That show will fail. That show will fail. It's bound to fail.
Well, at least they're
it's
consistent.
boring.
At least they're
Who
consistent.
wants to see her making cakes for a rich?
I
white
do
friend?
once. That's the problem.
Yeah, well,
And
everyone
maybe,
will,
maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it'll cash in. The people will watch the first time like a car crash, and it will be a car crash. I've seen the trailer. It looks.
Not unlike this.
It will fail, but she's delayed her own agony and given us all a little bit of a break. If there's one solace we can take from their grief grifting, it's that her awful, boring programme has been delayed, so we don't have to endure it yet.
And will that be the end of the Netflix deal? Will they get to Prime?
That's almost.
It's going lower and lower, and they're not accepted by the A-listers anymore.
This is the woman that turned up with ginger nuts going, we're going to change the world, the Archwell Foundation, we're going to make the world a better place. 4 years later, what's she doing? Making crappy little shows about baking cakes.
There's a brilliant article which is about Harry and Meghan, our favourite couple, which was in the Telegraph. Harry and Meghan have really fallen out of favour, haven't they, with pretty much everyone. Harry and Meghan, according to this, we know they went to Pasadena in LA to offer hugs and sympathy to survivors of the wildfires. And it's gone down really badly.
Yes, well, this article, it's all come out from a long article in Vanity Fair, which used to be a magazine that had certainly favourable views of Meghan and Harry. But this is a very detailed sort of analysis of their current state of play, talking to various people who have worked with them while they've been in America and sort of all trying to get an all-round picture. But reading the article, what you actually feel is that it's all very negative. One person does say, I think in the article, they seem very loved up, but it's the way that, of course, before they left, there were bullying allegations against Meghan, and now they're saying that once again, this leopard hasn't changed her spots, and that she has once again been bullying staff, talking about the podcast, which was very unsuccessful, and how difficult it was to put that together, and just the way they've gone about their behaviour, their sort of approach to life. Nothing has changed, and certainly people in Montecito don't seem to like them very much, and it just really puts their current state of play. That, as if she's got this program coming out in being delayed now, coming out at the beginning of March. We saw her, of course, going to have that visit in Pasadena to meet some people who were victims of the horrible fires in LA, losing their houses. But again, their PR strategy just doesn't seem to be working. And if Vanity Fair has turned against them, then the future at the moment pretty bleak for the Sussexes.
I mean, Justine Bateman, who's a Hollywood filmmaker, said Meghan Markle and Harry are no better than ambulance chasers. What a repulsive photo op they achieved. They're touring the damage. What are they? Are they politicians? They don't live in Pasadena. They are tourists. They're disaster tourists. I mean, this has come across very badly indeed. They wrote a huffy-puffy, according to this article, 631-word whine about Zuckerberg's decision to end the censorship on, this is on Facebook. They basically used these dreadful words again: normalising hate speech, sowing division, undermining diversity and equality, endangering marginalised communities, destroying democracy. Do you know what? I don't think it is actually about the PR necessarily. I think it's about the intent. The intent, as far as I can see, is to further their own interests rather than looking after people that they purport to represent.
Well, I think one of the problems is they've commercially got to make their life work. And obviously that's their most important priority now. How can they live the life that they want? Now, but America doesn't want dukes and duchesses running around the country. It's just not in their DNA. And yet here they are, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are promoting, their life, and it's not going down well. And more importantly, they say they don't want the press, but they need the press. And their hypocrisy is currently writ large because they need the oxygen of publicity, but the way they're going about it is basically causing them more problems. And people are seeing through the act that they're bringing to the party. Now, his trial is going to be happening this week in London, the start of against the MGM and News International, I believe. So it's a big week for him in the court of law over here. So it's going to be, again, they're going to be attracting all sorts of headlines. But for Meghan and Harry at the moment, it's not going well for them, particularly as America appears to be definitely turning against them.
Let's quickly talk about Harry, and this was another extraordinary revelation in this Vanity Fair article. You and I have laughed before about some of Harry and Meghan's hapless ideas that they had when they signed this ludicrously overpriced $100 million deal with Netflix for films and TV shows. For example, they wanted to do Emily in Paris only with a bloke. I don't think that's a very good idea. Their ideas were ridiculous. Now, we laughed about Harry's idea, which was that he goes round interviewing world leaders. So he suggested that he interviewed the Pope. He suggested that he interviewed Putin. He suggested that he interviewed Donald Trump. You remember when he put this idea up to Netflix, all the executives go, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, we like that. We like that. So can you get that ball rolling, Harry? Can you sort of put the feelers out? Can you get Vladimir to come to you, or will you go to him? And he went, oh, no, you'll have to set the interviews up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, they did say in this article that it was not $100 million, the Netflix deal, but it was a multi-million-dollar deal. That they clarified that. Of course, we expect that it was likely Harry and Meghan's team that released that big number because they were trying to stick it to the British royal family. Additionally, the Spotify thing was, Harry interviewing world leaders was the Spotify project. And they actually talk about this in the piece, saying that Harry was trying to interview people that he considered sociopaths to figure out how they became, and who was going to jump in line to participate in that. You make a great point about the Rolodex, because they say that they expected Meghan Markle, with her pull in Hollywood, to be able to bring in A-listers for her podcast. They say that she dropped the ball. She didn't have those contacts or friends. But I thought you were going to joke about, because this was my favorite, the idea that Harry should review Coco as a podcast. That, I mean, a 40-year-old man.
Chocolate, hot chocolate.
I mean, get a grip.
He wanted to do it. Yeah, you're right. He wanted to do a podcast where he sat down with a mate, a friend, a buddy, and they talked about hot chocolate. Oh, this is good, isn't it? Great idea, Harry. Go back to that sociopath idea. This was the essence of his idea about him interviewing Putin, Trump, and the Pope, people like that. It was this. it was based on this. He said, you know, they've all had traumatic childhoods. I don't know whether that's true or not. I'm pretty certain Donald Trump didn't have a particularly traumatic childhood. But he said they've all had traumatic childhoods and they all turned out to be sociopaths. But I had a very traumatic childhood. You know, he had a traumatic childhood, by the way, Kinsey, but he doesn't like to talk about it, except 99% of his entire life. Never stops talking about it. He said, but I had a traumatic childhood and I didn't turn out to be a sociopath. So, you know, first of all, well, thank you for that bit of self-diagnosis. We could maybe analyse that. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. But can't this man-child realise that if you go to someone like Donald Trump and say, we'd like to interview you about what a sociopath you are, that they're not sort of on balance likely to say yes, are they?
I mean, well, Vanity Fair went to them and said, we'd like to talk to you about how you're grifters. And they said, no, thanks. Yeah. So this is the result of that as well. Yeah, I mean, I believe when this article says Prince Harry just wants to linger in the charity space and stay at home with the kids, and Meghan Markle is the one that wants to be the superstar and is the one that's obsessed with monetizing the title. I believe that to be true. I think she's going to milk everything, like, you know, and her neighbors were complaining about that, you know, that they said that they've become villains within Montecito, and her neighbors are really disgusted by the way that she is trying to milk the title to make a dime, you know, around this family that she turned her back on.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this. In the Sunday Times today, Prince Harry is said to have pitched a sociopath podcast to the Spotify. A lengthy new profile of the couple reveals this. This is again in Vanity Fair. You know, they've got this deal with Spotify. Apparently, so he's pitched this really weird idea about, oh, let's do a show on sociopaths.
Well, yes, well, we sort of heard this before, so the article at times has gone over sort of things that have been already out there, much talked about, that some of his ideas were seen as stark raving mad, and the idea that interview Vladimir Putin to find out why he was a sociopath, you know, it just seemed to me a pretty stupid idea, which was laughed out by all accounts by the people behind it, because it just wasn't going to get off ground. How he even thought that was a good idea. But of course, he does play, you know, he's in this article has said that, you know, he basically still feels that his mother was murdered, and he doesn't know why he hasn't turned out to be a bit of a sociopath himself. But, you know, what it also says is he's not particularly good at reading the room. And he may not be, a bit like his uncle, the brightest tool in the box. So I think that might be part of the, well.
Yeah. This is the essence of their problem going forward. 2025 is going to be a crunch year for them, and I think it's going to be a disastrous year for them. 24 was very bad. Everything started to fall apart. 25, I think it's going to implode. I really do. And here's the essence of the problem. As you just said, she still can't wait to be world famous, to be, you know, a Hollywood superstar, the famous Meghan. She just wants to be more and more famous. He wants to be less and less famous. So they are searching for very different targets, very different aims.
But they know that people don't like her, because in the article it says he's a completely different person when he's with her because people are so mean to her. Right? So they are aware that people don't like her. Take a step back. Allow people to forget. People are angry with them. They do not like them. And we're not going to buy her stupid tea towel that says American Riviera Orchard.
Yeah, and last point, I do believe that the straw that broke the camel's back for the American public and the British public, as you say, Kinsey, quite rightly, everybody was pretty disillusioned with them already. But the grief grifting, the disaster tourism down to the Los Angeles fire scene, walking through other people's houses, looking at their smouldering possessions, the embers, the destruction, for what suspiciously looked like a photo op, for them to look like angels, a good publicity. People were disgusted by that, weren't they?
It reminded us too much of Meghan showing up with a camera crew to Uvalde, Texas, right after there was a shooting at a children's school. They do this far too often. To have your photo taken amongst the worst day of people's lives is utterly revolting. And they have got to change the playbook immediately if they want to be accepted in any way, shape, or form.
And I know, Kinsey, that when you say that, you're speaking for millions of people in Los Angeles, or certainly a vast number of people, a very significant number of people appalled by that grief grifting that the gruesome twosome did.
So, front page of the Mail. I'll tell you who looks fantastic. Sophie looks fantastic. 60. She's 60. And there's a lot of talk about her. She and her husband have just got on with it. She's kind of like a bit of a secret weapon, and she's really come into her own, I think, and she's matured. She's got an amazing dress sense now. I mean, I think it's fair to say, and you know far more than me, that when their engagement was announced, she was sort of, let's just say she dressed rather differently in sort of clompier shoes, and now obviously she's looking very elegant.
Yeah, well, definitely. And I think one of the things, I think she's got confidence now in her role. She completely is at one with her status. You know, she came from a PR background in the 90s, in the day for Capital Radio, and then from a PR perspective, married in 1999. It hasn't always been a smooth road, but definitely towards the end of the Queen's and Prince Philip's life, she started to get more and more, her role became within the family much more important, and was very helpful at all times. But more importantly, and I know from speaking from teams, people who work within the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh's office, that they are a very hard-working pair. They don't want fuss and bother. They just want to get on with it and try and help the royal family out as much as possible. And she is very much part of that and wants to just be, right, what do I need to do? I'll get on with it. She also does promote some pretty bold causes. I mean, she's not frightened of going to Ukraine and various other places to try and draw attention to certain issues. So she's definitely has an understanding of what part she has to play within the pared down royal family.
And of course she concentrates on women's issues, doesn't she, in conflict zones, and I admire her for that. So good for her, and happy birthday to her. I did name drop earlier. I've had dinner with her, so I just thought I'd throw that at you, Rupert. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Oh, dear.
1-0 to David Bowe, but have you presented an award to the Princess Royal? Anyway, there we go.
Oh, very good. Touche, yes. Very good.
Well, Samara, let's deal with the disaster tourists, the tragedy vultures, the grief grifters first. The people of LA, and I know a lot of them, they were appalled by this. It looked like opportunist photo opportunity grifting by both of them, that they went there to get filmed. She's actually gone back. She's gone back again, this time with a load of bags, you know. Oh, I've got clothes, I've got supplies, you know. And, you know, of course she gets out of her car in the car park. She's caught on film.
I know.
Every single time. The word is they were filmed by Netflix. You know, this is just disgusting, I think.
Yeah, you know it's bad when even Tinseltown turns on you. I mean, it's literally like no one is standing for their trauma tourism. I'm over it. Honestly, it's just ridiculous. Like, there was a video that was also posted that was not filmed by Netflix, which was her walking past a disabled veteran.
And not even looking.
And not even looking at him. You know why? Oh, yeah, because the cameras weren't on. It actually makes me think of a simpler time when they pretended that they were going to move to Canada because they were in search of privacy, and they went and lived on this sort of lake house, and we thought, oh, this is going to be their life now. Yeah, it kind of makes sense, you know, they want to be out of the press. No, they always wanted to live in LA, and they always wanted to be 200 kilometers, because that's how far they drove, to get to these photo opportunities that would serve them perfectly for their Netflix specials.
200 miles. It's America.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry. Conversion.
Sod all that foreign stuff.
Yes,
miles.
American Kev. But yeah, I have absolutely no sympathy for them, and it's pathetic that she would use this to basically, in my opinion, actually promote her new cooking show, because the fact that it got 100,000 dislikes, which we spoke about last week,
dislikes,
actually shows me that she's just trying to, you know, keep a bit of time to make a build-up for when it's actually going to release. So, yeah, it's very, very cheeky behaviour on her part, but I don't expect anything
And also,
more.
I was noting, it was supposed to come out like Wednesday, the 15th of January, kind of this week, if you're watching it this week, but you might be watching it next week. You know what I'm saying anyway, right about now. It's been delayed, postponed till March the 4th. Now, I'm thinking plenty of time to re-edit. After the way that was greeted, that trailer was greeted, I think Netflix are thinking maybe we need to kind of redirect, reposition. But certainly, I agree with her because we criticised her last week for releasing that trailer one day after the terrorist horror in New Orleans and Las Vegas. So that was bad timing. So I can't really have a go at her for not releasing her light and trite show amid the horror of the LA carnage. So, yeah, I agree with that decision. But I can't help feeling that announcement, I'm delaying my show, it gets the show talked about. So it just looked to me as if they were cashing in on LA's tragedy for their own publicity purposes. And certainly loads and loads, I know personally, loads of people in LA did not appreciate their presence, especially the famous actress Justine Bateman, who's really been going for them, just saying. And Kelly Osbourne now has also. Let's have a look at Kelly. I mean, she's off now.
Is it just me being my normal overthinking, cynical self? Or is it really disturbing to see all of these celebrities using other people's pain and suffering as a photo op to say, look, I'm helping, I'm doing this, I'm doing that? I don't believe you help so that you can get attention for helping. I believe you just help because you want to. I'm so confused. I think it's so wrong. No one asked you to come out and give hugs.
Well said, Kelly. But the point is, she says celebrities. I've made this point before. Hollywood, Los Angeles, is a city full of much bigger stars, much bigger celebrities than Harry and Meghan will ever be. But why did they not go down to see the victims, to look caring and sharing? Because they knew it would be inappropriate.
They knew that would come across as it is, which is crass and ghoulish, exactly. Frankly.
Mawkish.
Yes, but I guess the question you have to ask, and they should be asking themselves, is what does this add to the situation insofar as us turning up and giving it the fake hugs and the fake handshakes and the fake kisses and so on? I don't think there are any celebrities or others, any other, so-called ordinary members of LA that were sitting there thinking, if only Harry and Meghan would turn up. However, I have to say, on the other hand, do we think to an extent maybe Harry and Meghan are damned if they do, damned if they don't?
I wouldn't damn them if they don't. By the way, when Russell's saying this, we're trying to kind of channel Simon London a little bit. So what Simon would be saying, they're just trying to help, leave them alone, you're so horrible.
Do you know what it is for me? It's a rare slither of balance.
Russell doesn't really think this.
I'm just saying.
I mean, I don't mind us all agreeing on this one because you're right. I viscerally watched that. This hugging, everything can be cured by a Meghan hug. Do me a favour. I just watched it, and like Kelly Osbourne, like Justine Bateman, and I think like the three of us, I just viscerally thought, this is wrong.
Yeah.
They're cashing in here.
But to me, the test is, if the Netflix cameras were there, that then becomes the absolute... guarantee that this was self-publicity, crass and ghoulish. If the Netflix cameras weren't there, maybe. I'm just suggesting some might give them the benefit of the doubt. No. But if the Netflix thing is the cameras were there filming it to then go on a later episode of something or a trailer, which then explains why they've kicked the Love Meghan thing down the road, then that is absolutely unforgivable.
Yeah. I think I've been thinking about that show, With Love Meghan. What she'd love to call it better would be Love Meghan. Let's all love Meghan. Now, whether or not, Samara, as Russell points out, I've heard tell that it was a Netflix camera crew. In fairness to Netflix, I think even they might spot that might not be the best thing to do. However, the point is, there was a camera crew. They were caught on camera. If Netflix used that as part of the publicity for With Love Meghan, they made a big mistake.
Don't be fooled by anything. They are crisis voyeurs and they want to be that way. Honestly, it's ridiculous that anyone wants to fall for the fact that Meghan would have done this on her own if the cameras had not been there. Yeah. Now, we've seen that she's crawled out of her Montecito mansion yet again, come out today, and she's got her skinny jeans on and her little baseball cap and her bags full of makeup. Apparently, she's donated a bunch of makeup. Yeah, that's just what LA needs.
Emergency cosmetics. That's what LA needs.
Thank you.
So eyeliner.
They need water, clothes, and houses, not makeup.
No,
surely.
Someone took a photo of a bunch of spongy things that she's donated. It's just absolutely
you know, that was very theatrical, very studied, very filmic to be filmed carrying all those big bags of supplies. You can't avoid it. I mean, it's just that everything those two do, when they try to do alleged selfless acts of charity, there's always a camera handy, isn't there, Russell?
But I think the other problem is they have form, and they have such form when it comes to everything they've done in the past, which is, you know, let us come along to Prince Philip's funeral, knowing that there probably will be a Netflix camera crew with them, for instance. You know, whenever there's been interaction, you know, in the run-up to Harry's book, Spare Part, whatever it was, it was then evident that, you know, his last 3 or 4 visits to Britain and to the royal family were to glean information so that he could put it into the book. So they are a contrived couple. I mean, they engineer these things almost so that they know that the end game is, is that a wrap? Did we get that in the can? Yeah. And almost their entire existence, I think, for the last 6 or 7 years has been very much, this is doing stuff so that it becomes something that can be put on the telly.
One story that I heard last week and hesitated to repeat it because it just felt like silly to repeat it, has been discussed on one of the biggest, oldest podcasts, Never Not Funny, which is an award-winning comedy podcast that started in 2006. So this story was told on this podcast over the weekend. And so now I feel like it's okay to repeat it, that it's out there somewhere else. But I also felt like the reaction was really interesting. These are like a group of men, grown men, discussing Harry and Meghan. They don't have an opinion. I don't think they have an opinion. Well, actually, they were quite critical of the royal family later on in the podcast, making some jokes about breeding. But, you know, these are people that don't typically cover Harry and Meghan. So I thought it was interesting to hear the reaction on the Never Not Funny, the Jimmy Pardo podcast. And this is actually his co-host, Matt Belknap, who is talking here. And he says, speaking of celebrities, this is a secondhand story, so maybe I shouldn't be spreading it, but I'm just going to say it anyway, and you guys can take it with a grain of salt. Maybe it isn't true. I don't know. But Zoe, that's his daughter, went to volunteer at a place yesterday with some friends, just handing out stuff or whatever. She kept a low profile, unlike the people that were there the day before, which is the story. The day before, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had showed up to that place, and there's like hundreds of people there volunteering, he says. They cleared it out. Everybody, he claims. So he's saying there were hundreds of people there volunteering. This is regarding our fires here in California and in Los Angeles. He said hundreds of people were volunteering. And when Harry and Meghan showed up, he said they told hundreds of people to take 15. He says specifically, these people are coming in to pretend that they're helping and get a photo op. Now, while he's telling this story, Jimmy Pardo is losing it. A lot of bad words are said, and he's screaming like, no. And he argues himself. He says, you know what? We saw Nick Cannon, which I don't know if you're familiar with it. I've worked with Nick. Nick Cannon is a comedian and a TV host. I mean, he's just kind of like one of actually probably the biggest personalities we have in the States. He said, we saw Nick Cannon, and people badmouth Nick Cannon for a lot of reasons, probably all of his children with all of his baby mamas. But we saw Nick Cannon that day. He joined in with everybody else. That's what you do. That's helping. And they're all like agreeing, like, yeah, F them is what somebody says pretty aggressively. And then Matt says, yeah, I forgot about that. If that story is real, they continue about Harry and Meghan. You know what them. And Matt continues, it was a parent of a kid that she goes to school with who the kid was there the day before. She and the kid were there the day before. And then there's no reason not to believe it's true. And then someone says, that's awful. And that's just ridiculous. And so they go on to talk about how maybe in the 40 years ago, how would a celebrity have dealt with something like this? Would they have done something just for a PR op? And they kind of explained how you would have done a PR op years ago, but how like Bob Hope was actually showing up and working. Maybe it was a PR op for Bob Hope, but he was showing up and working. And then just how Prince Harry should know better. They joked about how Meghan was supposed to be the one that kind of pulls Prince Harry back to reality, and then laughed at the idea of that because I think they have kind of an understanding of who Meghan is, which Vanity Fair says she's the one that wants to be the star. Prince Harry, he's okay with staying at home with the kids, stepping out every once in a while to do charity work. He's all right if Meghan is the one that is the primary caretaker financially for the family. If Meghan wants to go out and make all of the money, which I don't think any of us would disagree with. That to me has been common knowledge for a while. Also, they talk about how just friendly and outgoing he can be when he's by himself, but how his attitude completely changes when he's around Meghan because he knows how nasty people are to her. And I'm like, so they know. So you know how people feel about you, yet you continue to try to manipulate us with things like your appearance at the fire. That is, again, this is all alleged. If you want to listen to the podcast, it's on the last episode of Never Not Funny, the Jimmy Pardo podcast. And they tear into Harry and Meghan quite a bit, but they are also a little critical of the British royal family. So mentally prepare for that. Speaking of being a little bit critical of the British royal family, I didn't feel like the Vanity Fair piece was a total hit job on Meghan Markle either. I didn't appreciate the way that she kind of criticized the Princess of Wales for the early years, her early years pursuits. First of all, I'd remind her that for the last year, this woman had cancer. And for the 4 years before that, people were sick and dying. So she's had a lot on her plate over the last 5 years, if you ask me. But also, I have learned a lot about the early years. When a relative of mine was going through something with his significant other, they had small children. And I remember sitting down with them and explaining some of the things that I only know because of Catherine's research into the early years, saying, your children, your attitudes around your children, the way you treat each other around your children, what they take in, whether it's on an iPad, a telephone, or a TV, that is determining who they are 20 years from now. The only reason I know that is because of what the Princess of Wales does. So I really did not agree with that comment about how Catherine's contributed nothing over the last 11 years when it comes to the early years project. Yes, she has. I don't even have kids, and I'm lecturing people about information and statistics and analytics that I've discovered thanks to the Princess of Wales about how to raise strong babies that know they're loved and feel secure, and how important that is, that you show affection and love to each other, blah, blah, blah. I know that because of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. So I did not like that piece of the article. It's not just a scathing review of Meghan Markle. There are some moments where it seems like they're complimenting her. In that one part where they're comparing her to the Princess of Wales, and they say, in this short time, Meghan's done this, and this, basically saying she's gone from a cable news actress to the CEO of American Riviera Orchard or whatever, I sit back and I go, that's a person with ADD. Like, how can you consider that an accomplishment? That looks like somebody that has a very hard time committing to anything to me. Sorry, not sorry. So while there were certain bits of the Vanity Fair article that, of course, I was obsessed with, I did not, and maybe that's good. Maybe it's good that they look balanced and that they're being open-minded about all parties involved. But to go after Catherine in the Early Years Project felt like low-hanging fruit. It felt irrelevant, and it felt untrue. With plenty of time on our hands today, Kev and I are going to dissect this Vanity Fair article that was researched so forensically. Kev, I'm getting calls from outlets that I typically don't hear from that are like, we've got to dive into this Vanity Fair article. Do you feel like the tide is turning for Harry and Meghan? Does this Vanity Fair article have some weight that they can't just dismiss in the way that you and I have discussed previously?
Absolutely. I think this is the end of the line for the image that Meghan has been desperately trying to promote. That is that she's a lovely person. Oh, I must go and help the victims of the Los Angeles fire. Well, if you really want to be thought of as a nice person, Meghan, start behaving properly. Start behaving well to your staff. Start treating people with respect. What we're getting more and more is this image that she wants to portray in public, and the truth about her when she's not in public. Now, Vanity Fair, a lot of people say astonishing revelations. Well, I thought it was a fantastic read. It's an 8,000-word article. That is huge. That's almost as long as a novel. It is forensically researched. Vanity Fair is a very respectable publication. They cannot just turn around and say, this isn't true. This is just people with an axe to grind, people with an angle who are against us. No, they can't say that. In fact, their only unofficial response to this fantastic article in Vanity Fair is it's distressing. Well, that's not a denial, is it? Now, everything that Vanity Fair is saying really is just an expansion on what just 2 or 3 months ago the Hollywood Reporter said about her. That she was a tyrant in high heels, that she had tantrums at 5 in the morning, that she reduced grown men on her staff to tears. Now, Vanity Fair has taken that theme and run with it, and they've even managed to up the ante that people who worked with her were so traumatized by the way she treated her that they had to go into therapy. They can't deny this anymore. And let's talk about Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair is the nearest thing the magazine world in America gets to the Bible. To say it's taken seriously is the understatement of the century. Vanity Fair has an impeccable position in American culture. It is the magazine of the United States of America. To be disrespected in that, to be written off as American hustlers by Vanity Fair, trust me, Kinsey, you know this, that's the end of the line. There's no coming back from this. And how many times must this woman be accused of bullying before people like you and I can turn around and say, that's enough accusation, she is a bully. Now, she was accused of being a bully back in Britain when they were still working royals. She bullied front staff at Buckingham Palace, in all the palaces, by all accounts. Memos were written to the Queen to alert her to what was going on. She made Kate, cry in a row over the bridesmaids' dresses. Then they come to America, where she's accused of being a bully to her staff there. That is enshrined by the Hollywood Reporter, another very respected publication. We're not talking about sensationalist tabloids here. We're talking about proper journalistic publications that do their work, that do the research. The Hollywood Reporter spoke to 12 people who have worked for Meghan, one of whom still was working for her. Now the Vanity Fair has spoken to many more people who've been around her, who've worked for her. And one person who said that anyone who says Meghan is a delight to work for should be ashamed of themselves. She is a nightmare. She is a nightmare. I mean, I think we can say, unless she's going to come out and explain exactly why she is not a bully, Meghan Markle is a bully. And it is as simple as that. And that is why her name is poison in Hollywood, why she is toxic, and Harry and Meghan will never make it in Tinseltown. 2025 is going to be an interesting year for those two.